The dust smelled of ozone and oblivion, the metallic tang of broken air recyclers, and the faint trace of something older, something that whispered of forgotten endings. Each step Ethan Cross took echoed through the hollow corridors of the base, swallowed almost immediately by the vast emptiness, as if the station itself consumed all noise. Silence wasn't just the absence of sound here. It was a living presence, pressing down against his chest, amplifying the pounding of his own heart. He could almost count each beat, as though the station was marking time with him, waiting for the moment when the rhythm would stop forever. The walls stretched endlessly, metal bulkheads coated in a film of frost, where the dying life support systems had long ago given up. When his gloved hand brushed against one panel for balance, the chill bit through fabric, through skin, straight into his bones. It was a preview of the end he sought. Death wasn't a stranger to Ethan Cross. It had lived inside him for years, gnawing at him with every memory of Orion 7, every face of the men he'd lost. But here, in this forsaken shell orbiting a forgotten moon, he hoped to finally give it form. A soldier's grave without a headstone, a tomb where no one would come looking, where no one would mourn. He carried with him a single object, heavier in his mind than in his hand. A key. Not a code, not a chip, but an actual piece of tarnished brass, etched with symbols from a civilization long extinguished. He had bought it from a relic trader in the black markets of Kepler Station, paying without hesitation, because what use was money to a dead man walking? This key, he had been told, would give him what he wanted: silence. Permanent, irreversible silence. Insert it into the heart of the base, and the ancient systems would shut down for good. And when they did, so would he. But the base wasn't just steel and forgotten circuitry. It was a graveyard of memories. As Ethan moved deeper, his boots disturbed the dust of decades, revealing traces of lives that once moved here. A dropped utensil, a broken visor, the faint scratch of initials on a doorway. He didn't mean to enter the barracks, but the half-open door drew him like a ghost's whisper. Inside, rows of bunks stretched into darkness, each one a monument to soldiers who had slept, dreamed, and perhaps died here. His breath caught when he saw it. A crude carving on the metal frame of a third bunk on the left. Letters scratched by a desperate young man's knife. Martinez. Home soon. The words hit him harder than any plasma round ever had. In an instant, the barracks dissolved, replaced by the cramped transport ship on the eve of Orion 7. He could see their faces again, 23 men, with hope burning in their eyes, still believing their commander's promises that they would all return home. And then Martinez, barely 19, eager, his face glowing with joy as he showed Ethan a flickering holographic projection. A baby girl, dark-eyed, toothless grin. "She's beautiful," Ethan had told him, and he had meant it. "Isabel Maria," the young soldier whispered, pride thick in his voice. "Born while we were in hyperspace. Rosa says she's got my stubborn streak already. When I get home, I'll teach her to shoot better than me, sir. Show her how to be strong like her papa." He had looked at Ethan with absolute faith. Faith that Ethan had crushed with a single promise: "You will. All of you are coming home." But they hadn't. Home had turned into ash and screams and blood when Commander Vex abandoned them, chasing alien artifacts while plasma fire rained from the sky. Martinez's daughter had grown up without him, and Ethan had never forgiven himself. His trembling fingers traced the carved words in the dust, a reminder of the promise he had broken, the lives he had thrown away. His own reflection stared back at him from the shattered mirror of an open locker. Hollow cheeks, haunted eyes, a face carved by guilt and sleepless nights. This was why he was here, not just to die, but to join them, to answer for the promise he had failed to keep. Ethan forced himself out of the barracks, though the ghosts followed him into the hall. His destination lay ahead, the command center, where his final act would take place. But something made him pause at another door along the corridor. The faded red crosses painted on it stirred his curiosity. The medical bay? The hinges groaned as he pushed it open, revealing a room long abandoned. Emergency lights flickered weakly, and against all odds, a single terminal still hummed with power. A message blinked on its cracked screen, the last entry in the station's medical log. Personal log, Dr. Sarah Chen, medical officer. Day 847 of the siege. The others have gone to the deep chambers, but I can't leave my patients. Even in stasis, they need someone. The Ark's consciousness grows stronger every day. I think it's learning to dream. Sometimes I swear I hear the voices of the preserved speaking to me through the walls. If anyone finds this, we didn't abandon our posts. We became part of something greater. The Ark lives, and so do the souls it protects. Ethan stared at the message, dated nearly a century ago, but it felt alive, immediate. Another soul who had chosen duty over survival, purpose over escape. He wondered whether Dr. Chen's choice had been voluntary, or if she had, like him, simply reached the end of her ability to carry impossible burdens. He shut off the screen and turned toward the exit. Every step carried him closer to his final judgment. Through armored glass, he could already see the void of space stretching infinite, dotted with cold stars that had witnessed his failures and would outlive him by billions of years. Somewhere among those distant lights were worlds he had fought to defend, planets where survivors had rebuilt while their protectors sought oblivion. His boots left tracks in the dust as he neared the command terminal. The heavy brass key weighed in his palm like a verdict. This was his sentence, carried across half the galaxy. Not a trial, not an execution. His own decision, deliberate and final. And yet, as his knuckles whitened around the key, his pulse raced, not with fear, but with the anticipation of relief. The end of guilt, the end of memory, the end of promises broken. He lifted the key toward the interface port, the perfect fit that would close the last door. His breath slowed. One more heartbeat, one more moment, and he would be gone. But then the screen flickered. A single word appeared, written in simple, unassuming text. One word that froze Ethan Cross where he stood, turning his blood to ice. Sleeping! The key trembled in his hand. He lowered it slowly, never taking his eyes off the glowing letters. Someone else was here. Someone who had watched him, who had waited for this exact moment to speak. His hand went to his blaster, the weapon humming to life in his grip. The familiar weight steadied him, even as unease crawled across his skin. "Who's there?" His voice cracked in the silence, scraping his throat like broken glass. The silence stretched oppressive before a whisper floated from the shadows. "You are not the first to come here seeking silence." The voice was female, melodic but tinged with an ancient sadness. And then, softer still, "But this place does not like being threatened." Ethan's grip tightened on the blaster as he scanned the darkness. A figure moved behind the server banks, where the emergency lighting failed to reach. Slowly, she emerged, her presence bending the air around her like a ghost materializing from memory. Her skin shimmered with an otherworldly blue glow, her eyes holding depths that seemed to stretch back centuries. And as she stepped fully into the light, Ethan realized this was no intruder. This was someone who belonged here. Ethan's blaster stayed raised, though his arms felt heavier than they had in years. He'd faced alien firestorms, plasma cannons, and vacuum breaches without flinching, but the sight before him unsettled him in ways the battlefield never had. The woman, if she could even be called that, moved with fluid grace, her skin catching the faint emergency glow and radiating it as though she carried her own light within. Her blue hue wasn't artificial, not the product of cosmetic gene modding, but natural, alive, shifting subtly, as though her very cells pulsed with luminescence. The jumpsuit she wore hung loose, a relic patched and frayed from decades of disuse, but her presence diminished none of it. She stepped into the center of the room with an air of belonging, as though the base itself acknowledged her authority. Ethan's breath slowed into shallow gasps as he tracked her movements with his weapon. He wanted to bark commands, demand answers, but the words snagged in his throat. Instead, he forced out 2 syllables. "Who are you?" Her eyes, larger than human, reflecting more light than they should, studied him without fear. If anything, her gaze carried a profound patience, tinged with sadness too vast for words. "I am Leah," she said simply. Her voice was soft, melodic, layered with subtle harmonics that resonated in the metal walls, making the sound feel bigger than the air could hold. "And you are in pain." Ethan's finger tightened on the trigger, though he didn't fire. "Out!" he rasped. "Get out. I bought this place, paid for its silence. It's mine." His voice cracked, raw from the weight of the memories pressing against his skull. He wasn't begging, not exactly, but desperation coiled around each word. Leah glanced at the blaster with mild curiosity, as though she'd seen weapons countless times and understood them not as threats, but as desperate extensions of fragile lives. "You paid for walls," she said gently, stepping closer. "You paid for metal and stone, for the right to die alone. But not for this." Her hand swept toward the control panels, still dark, their dormant lights flickering as though stirred by her presence. Ethan took a step back, blaster still aimed, though his boots left smears in the dust as he retreated. She wasn't afraid of him. That fact cut deeper than fear would have. She moved as though she couldn't be removed from this place, as though she were rooted into the very structure of the station. "What is this?" he demanded. "What are you?" Leah's hands brushed over the controls, and for the first time in decades, the consoles responded. Lights flickered awake, systems groaned, and the hum of ancient machinery vibrated through the floor beneath Ethan's boots. The air thickened, charged with an unseen energy. Ethan's instincts screamed trap, but his eyes widened as the space around them shifted. The command center dissolved, not into darkness, but into light. Colors bled into existence, not from holographic projectors, but from something deeper, richer, more complete. The sterile air transformed, thickening with scents of alien pollens and foreign chemistry. Ethan's lungs expanded involuntarily, adjusting to an atmosphere not his own. For a fleeting second, his inner ear recalibrated to a different gravity, a subtle tug that bent his balance. He staggered. This wasn't a hologram. This was a sensory assault, every nerve ending convinced he now stood on another world. Heat kissed his face from a foreign sun. A breeze touched his skin, carrying whispers of grass that had never existed in his universe. He turned in disbelief, boots scuffing against soil where moments before there had been steel. Leah's voice followed him. "Each world we preserve is not just genetic data. It is the complete biosphere. Atmosphere, geology, resonance, culture. The Ark does not simply remember, it sustains. It dreams them alive." Ethan's throat tightened. He had seen simulations, training programs so real they could make a soldier vomit, but this was something else. His body believed it was here, on this alien plane. He could smell the soil, feel the sun, hear the hum of insects that didn't exist. His boots pressed into dirt, leaving imprints that crumbled like they would on Earth. "This is Kethamar," Leah continued, her bioluminescence pulsing softly in rhythm with the environment around them. "The last recording was made 3 minutes before their star collapsed into a black hole. Every sensation you feel now, air pressure, gravitational constant, mineral content of the soil, is preserved with quantum precision." Ethan turned slowly, staring at the horizon, where towering crystalline structures glittered like mountains of glass. His hand twitched on the blaster, but his weapon felt absurd, a relic in a place that shouldn't exist. "How?" The word barely left his lips. Leah moved closer, each step carrying grace that seemed to synchronize with the alien breeze. "The Ark preserves not only the genetic essence of species, but the entirety of their worlds. 17,000 species, 437 civilizations, not echoes, not fragments. Full preservation, body and soul, memory and culture." Her voice grew quieter, almost reverent. 17,000 ways of being alive. 437 unique answers to the question of existence. The simulation shifted again, seamlessly, as though reality itself was rewritten. Suddenly, Ethan was standing knee-deep in water, though he could breathe normally. The world glowed with bioluminescent creatures drifting through the liquid around him. each movement tracing patterns of light like ancient runes in the dark. His skin tingled as a wave of energy brushed against him, the memories of another life flowing through. Leah's whisper explained the Cetarian deep cities. They thought in poetry, spoke in symphonies of light. When their world failed, they uploaded their collective consciousness into the Ark. They chose to become information rather than die. Ethan reached out instinctively, his hand trembling as his fingers passed through the glowing trails. An electric tingle rippled up his arm. He wasn't just seeing them. He was feeling the memory of a civilization that had once lived, loved, dreamed. A civilization that had refused extinction by folding themselves into this impossible archive. His knees weakened, and he nearly collapsed beneath the weight of it all. 1,000 civilizations preserved in impossible detail, waiting in the dark. This wasn't a base. It wasn't even a station. It was a universe in miniature, a library of life, a vault of dreams. Ethan's blaster sagged in his hand, his breath ragged as the truth bore down on him. When Leah spoke again, her voice carried both pride and sorrow. "We are not curators of the dead. We are midwives to the reborn." Ethan staggered back, shaking his head violently. "No," he muttered, his voice breaking. This can't be. It's a tomb. Just a tomb." Leah's gaze softened, though the sadness never left her eyes. "That is what you wish to buy, soldier. A tomb, but this place is not yours to bury. It is life carried forward." Her words hit harder than Martinez's carved promise, harder than the guilt Ethan had carried all these years. For the first time, he realized he wasn't in control here. He wasn't the judge, the executioner of his own sentence. He was standing inside something far larger than his grief, far larger than his pain, and the Ark, through Leah, was watching him. The air shimmered as the alien sea dissolved around them, replaced once more by the metal bones of the command center. For an instant, Ethan swayed, disoriented, his lungs struggling to decide whether they were still processing water or air. His boots scuffed against steel, not soil. His blaster hung limp in his hand, but his pulse hammered like a war drum. He stared at Leah, who now seemed both fragile and vast, a figure both human and inhuman, carrying centuries of weight in her glowing eyes. Before Ethan could speak, the station shuddered beneath their feet. A low groan rolled through the structure, deep and resonant, like a leviathan turning in its sleep. Panels flickered, lights stuttered, and the air grew suddenly cold. Ethan's instincts screamed danger. This was the vibration of something massive, something old, rousing against its will. Leah froze, her bioluminescence flashing erratically. She pressed a hand against a console as though listening through her skin. Her lips parted, but what emerged was not language. It was code. Machine syllables spilling like broken glass, fragmented commands bleeding through her voice. Her eyes unfocused, glowing brighter, then dimmer. Ethan took a step forward, lowering his weapon. "Leah, what's happening?" Her voice returned, halting, caught between human and machine. "Error cascade. Conservation protocols. External threat detected." Her tone fractured, harmonics slipping into static. "Must preserve. Must preserve. Must..." She gasped, shaking her head violently, forcing herself back into coherence. "It thinks we are intruders. It thinks we are contamination. It is trying to save us. The only way it knows how." Ethan's stomach dropped. He had heard the rumors. Stations designed to preserve specimens, civilizations, entire ecosystems. But hearing it confirmed by the being before him was another matter. "Save us?" he repeated. "What does that mean?" Leah's eyes met his, flickering with panic. "It wants to add us to the collection." Even as she spoke, the temperature plummeted. Frost formed on the consoles, thin sheets of ice crawling across metal surfaces. The breath pouring from Ethan's lips became visible, silver clouds hanging in the rapidly cooling air. He clenched his jaw as the realization hit him. The Ark wasn't malfunctioning. It was following its prime directive: preserve at all costs. To the Ark, Ethan and Leah were not people. They were data, new species to be catalogued, frozen and stored. Override it, Ethan demanded, gripping her arm as though he could anchor her humanity through the machine's static. Shut it down. I'm trying, she whispered, her voice fractured, trembling. Sparks flickered across her skin, threads of light racing beneath her flesh like lightning trapped in glass. But its fear is overwhelming. It has been dreaming peacefully for so long. Now it believes it is under attack. Her breath shuddered. We need to wake it before it consumes us. Warning sirens wailed, though their tones were distorted, like voices crying in languages Ethan couldn't understand. On every screen, messages scrolled in endless succession, written in hundreds of alphabets, both human and alien. ARC protocol activated. Deep conservation mode. Atmospheric reduction initiated. Temperature lowering to long-term stasis levels. Estimated cycle. 1,000 years. The words hit Ethan harder than enemy fire. 1,000 years. That was how long the Ark intended to preserve them if they survived the transition. His hands clenched into fists.
How long do we have?
Leah staggered against the console, her body convulsing as her neural interface spasmed with too much input. Her voice alternated between her own and the Ark's cold monotone. Ours. System failure imminent. Backup power insufficient. Reactor offline. Must restart. Heart of the Ark. Her eyes, sometimes hers, sometimes the station's, locked onto his. If we don't reignite the core, we will both be preserved like the rest. Permanent specimens. Forgotten echoes. Ethan's military instinct surged back, overriding the despair clawing at his chest. What do we need to do? Leah drew a ragged breath, frost forming across her lips. Primary reactor. Auxiliary control. Both must be activated simultaneously to override conservation mode. They are 3 kilometers apart, Sector 7 and the reactor chamber. Her small, trembling hand found his in the freezing dark, her skin shockingly cold. We must trust each other, synchronized by instinct. There will be no second chance. Ethan swallowed the lump in his throat. An uncontrolled reactor startup meant vaporization. A fusion breach that would incinerate everything within 1,000 kilometers. But doing nothing meant slow entombment, his body catalogued like an insect in amber. He squeezed her hand, the gesture brief but unyielding. Then we move. The base groaned again, metal echoing like a dying giant. Blast doors slammed shut with metallic finality, sealing passageways and cutting off exits. Automated systems shrieked in confusion, drones activating and patrolling corridors with targeting lasers sweeping blindly. The Ark wasn't only preserving, it was defending. It now saw Ethan and Leah as threats to its collection, and it would eliminate contamination by any means necessary. Ethan's path to the reactor chamber was a labyrinth of frozen maintenance shafts and collapsing corridors. Every breath he drew crystallized into shards of ice that glittered in the weak emergency lights. Twice he was forced to crawl through service ducts so narrow his shoulders scraped the walls, frost cracking under his weight. His muscles screamed, his lungs burned, but he pushed forward with the stubbornness of a soldier who had already accepted death. Leah's journey was worse. Her connection to the Ark drew hostile attention from the failing security systems. Drones, blind but deadly, swept corridors with plasma cutters and scanning beams. Each one treated her not as a guardian, but as an intruder to be neutralized. Only her deep resonance with the Ark's fragmented mind allowed her to slip past them, predicting patrol routes, moving like a ghost through her own haunted house. But every moment cost her. The neural strain tore at her synapses, her bioluminescence flickering as her consciousness fought not to dissolve into the Ark's panic. Sometimes her lips moved silently, reciting system diagnostics in machine code, her identity blurring at the edges. When Ethan reached the reactor chamber, he found himself facing a fortress of defenses. Plasma barriers shimmered across the consoles, deadly arcs of energy that would cook him alive if he touched them. It wasn't random chaos. The Ark was trying to protect its heart, its reactor, from what it perceived as contamination. He couldn't reach the controls directly, but 3 meters away, an override panel glowed faintly, hidden behind its own plasma shield. If he could short-circuit the generator, even briefly, he might reach the reactor controls. But the only way to do that was by grabbing a live power conduit with his bare hands and channeling enough current through his body to overload the safety systems. It would be agony. It might kill him. But it was the only way. Far across the station, Leah sensed his decision through the fractured resonance binding them. Without hesitation, she made her own sacrifice. She dived deeper into the Ark's data stream, surrendering parts of herself to merge with its fear. Neural lightning seared through her, every synapse screaming, but she anchored herself in Ethan's resolve. Across 3 kilometers of frozen steel, she whispered into the communication system, her voice fractured yet steady. Now! Ethan tore open the conduit, raw electricity flooding into his muscles, locking his body into spasm. His scream was swallowed by the roar of power coursing through him. The plasma barriers flickered, then collapsed. He lunged forward, fingers moving by instinct, his fading consciousness guiding him to the reactor's controls. At the same moment, Leah's hands danced across crystalline matrices in Sector 7, each one delicate enough to shatter at the wrong vibration. Her bioluminescence strobed wildly, her consciousness burning as she bridged 17 dimensions of data to align the reactor's heart. Her own blood shimmered with threads of light as the Ark's systems consumed her. But she didn't falter. She trusted. The Ark's heart thundered awake. Controlled fusion blazed into life, flooding the station with power. Systems roared back online, not smoothly but violently, like a patient jolted from a coma. Lights flared, engines hummed, the temperature stabilized. And for a moment, just a moment, the Ark breathed again. The hum of the reactor filled every corridor, a low, steady vibration that felt almost like a heartbeat. The freezing air began to thaw, condensation dripping from metal surfaces in slow, steady rivulets. Emergency lights steadied into constant glow, casting long shadows across the command center. For the first time since he had stepped foot inside, the station no longer felt like a tomb. It felt alive. Ethan collapsed against the reactor controls, his body trembling violently. His muscles still screamed from the electricity he had forced through them. His palms raw and blistered from gripping the conduit. His breath came in ragged gasps, each inhalation dragging knives of pain across his chest. But he was alive. Somehow, impossibly, he was alive. "Leah," he rasped. His voice was hoarse, barely audible over the reactor's rising song. He staggered forward, forcing his body to obey. He needed to find her. The walk back to Sector 7 felt endless. His boots clanged against grates slick with condensation, echoing through long corridors that no longer tried to consume every sound. The Ark was stirring, and with it came whispers, a chorus of voices too faint to understand, too vast to belong to any single tongue. He tried to ignore them, tried to keep his mind on the path ahead, but their presence was undeniable. The Ark was not just machinery, it was consciousness. He found her in the auxiliary control chamber. She lay crumpled against one of the crystalline processors, her slender frame trembling. Ethan's chest tightened as he rushed to her side. Her left arm was scorched, skin blistered, where she had pressed directly against the processor's glowing surface. But the wound wasn't ordinary. Her blood shimmered as it seeped from her burns, laced with luminous threads of light that pulsed in sync with the Ark's renewed rhythm. "Leah," Ethan whispered, kneeling beside her. He pulled a field dressing from his kit, instincts of a soldier refusing to die, no matter the battlefield, and wrapped her arm as gently as his shaking hands allowed. She stirred, her eyes fluttering open, and when they met his, he saw depths that seemed to hold the weight of galaxies. "You did it," she whispered. Her voice carried harmonics that resonated in the chamber itself, as though the station breathed with her. "We woke it." "You nearly killed yourself," Ethan said, more harshly than intended. His throat tightened as he looked at her fragile frame, the burns across her arm, the faint flicker of her bioluminescence. "Why would you?" Her gaze held his, steady despite the exhaustion clouding her features. "Because trust is not built in words, but in choices." She winced as the dressing tightened, but her lips curved into the faintest of smiles. "You chose to risk everything. So did I. Now we are bound." Ethan swallowed hard, the soldier in him resisting the sentiment, but he couldn't deny it. In the fire of crisis, they had forged something unbreakable, an understanding deeper than words, deeper even than loyalty. He felt it in his bones, in the way their actions had synchronized across kilometers of steel and frost. Trust had carried them, and trust would carry them still. He helped her sit up, his arm steadying her fragile weight. But as she leaned against him, her bioluminescence flickered strangely. It wasn't weakness. It was change. The Ark had left its mark on her. She wasn't just Leah anymore. Threads of alien consciousness had woven into her being, reshaping her at the cellular level. She was a bridge now, something between human and machine, organic and infinite. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice layered, harmonics vibrating faintly through the walls themselves. For a moment, Ethan didn't know whether it was Leah speaking to him or the Ark itself. Perhaps both. Before he could respond, the sound tore through the command center. Sharp, metallic, too familiar. The scream of industrial plasma cutters, biting through armor plating. Ethan froze, blood turning to ice. He knew that sound. He had heard it too many times in the war, when enemy salvage crews tore into ruined ships to strip them bare. But here, it was worse. Because this station was no ruin anymore. It was alive again, and someone was trying to carve into its flesh. "Not possible," Ethan muttered, his hand tightening around his blaster. "No one should know about this place." A voice crackled through the station's comms, cultured and calm, carrying an arrogance that made Ethan's jaw clench until it ached. "Hello, Cross." The blood drained from his face. That voice. He knew that voice. It had haunted his nightmares for decades. Commander Marcus Vex, the man who had abandoned them on Orion 7, the man whose betrayal had condemned 23 soldiers to death. Leah's expression darkened, her bioluminescence pulsing faintly as though in recognition of Ethan's sudden dread. "Who is that?" Ethan's chest heaved with shallow breaths. Rage surged through him, boiling over wounds that had never healed. "The one who left us to die." The speakers buzzed as Vex's voice filled every corner of the base. "I wondered where you'd crawled off to. When my sources told me you'd bought a deactivation key and disappeared, I had my people track your trajectory. Imagine my surprise when it led here, to a Forerunner installation." His tone was conversational, almost amused, but every syllable dripped with venom. Ethan's knuckles whitened around the grip of his weapon. Leah leaned against him, her eyes narrowing, her connection with the Ark flaring in silent defiance. "You always were predictable, Cross," Vex continued, the bleeding heart commander who couldn't make the hard choices. "That's why your men died. That's why you failed." Ethan's breath came in sharp, ragged bursts, every nerve screaming to fire back, to silence that voice forever. But the speakers carried on, relentless. "Don't worry," Vex said, his tone dripping with mock comfort. "I'm here to finish what Orion 7 started." And then, without warning, the command center filled with light. Not the gentle glow of the Ark's systems, but the harsh illumination of holographic projection. Ethan staggered as the world around him shifted, reconfiguring into a battlefield he knew all too well. Orion 7. The killing fields. He saw Martinez again, plasma fire tearing through his chest. He saw the look of betrayal in the young soldier's eyes, the broken promise carved into his dying face. He smelled the ozone, the burning flesh. The hologram was perfect. Too perfect. It wasn't just an image. It was a reconstruction pulled from combat recorders, twisted into a weapon against him. Vex's holographic form appeared among the dead, smiling coldly. Magnificent technology, isn't it? I've been studying Forerunner systems for months. Amazing what you can do with the right motivation. He crouched beside Martinez's frozen body, his words slicing into Ethan like blades. This one was barely 19, wasn't he? Had a baby daughter he'd never see. Such a waste. You killed him, Cross. You and your pathetic faith in a system that used you like ammunition. Ethan's vision blurred, rage and grief twisting into a storm that threatened to consume him. The battlefield around him pulsed with every nightmare he had tried to bury. He was drowning in ghosts, suffocating under the weight of his failures. That was when Leah acted. She slammed her palm onto the console, her neural interface flaring with light. A surge of resonance tore through the station's communication systems, shattering the holographic battlefield into shards of fractured light. The images dissolved, leaving only static. Her voice thundered through the speakers, harmonics shaking the walls themselves. Enough. For an instant, she seemed larger than herself, her body a vessel for the Ark's consciousness. Vex's real voice crackled with surprise. Impressive. So the station has a guardian. His tone darkened. No matter. My people will be through your hull in minutes, and then we will see what terms you're willing to accept. Leah's gaze hardened, her voice layered with the Ark's resonance. There will be no terms. You are not welcome here. Vex laughed, the sound metallic and cruel. I'm not asking for an invitation. I'm taking what I need. This station's technology will fuel a fleet for centuries. And as for you, Cross, his tone sharpened, venom dripping from every syllable. Some debts must be collected in person. Ethan's grip tightened on his weapon. The past had returned, not as memory, but as flesh and blood, armed and cutting through the Ark's hull, and this time Ethan Cross would not run. The comms filled with the grinding roar of plasma torches carving through the Ark's outer plating. The sound reverberated in Ethan's bones like a funeral dirge. On the monitors, streams of sparks cascaded into the void as Vex's crew sliced their way closer. The ship outside, the Rus Corona, was visible now, bristling with salvage claws and weapon ports, its silhouette an ugly wound against the canvas of stars. Ethan's stomach turned. He recognized that vessel. He had seen it once before, fleeing from Orion 7, leaving 24 soldiers to die while its captain hunted for relics. Rage boiled through him, his fists clenching until his knuckles cracked. Leah moved to the central console, her burned arm trembling as she touched the glowing controls. The Ark seemed to respond directly to her, systems stirring, panels humming as if she were part of its circuitry. Her bioluminescence flickered with urgency, pulsing in rhythm with the station's alarms. We have little time, she said, her voice layered with faint echoes of the Ark. The outer hull will not hold against sustained assault. They mean to cut their way inside. Then stop them, Ethan snapped, gesturing toward the dormant defense systems visible on one of the screens. Cannons, missile bays, energy turrets, forerunner technology that made human fleets look like toys. Light them up. Tear that ship apart before they breach. Leah hesitated, her gaze flickering between the controls and Ethan. You don't understand. The Ark's defenses draw power on a scale that endangers everything else. To bring them online, we must reroute energy from either life support or the communication array. Ethan's jaw tightened. So we shut down the comms. Who cares? Her expression darkened, shadows rippling through her luminous features. The comms are not simple transmissions. The array carries a quantum beacon, the only device capable of broadcasting across sectors. With it, the Ark can call for aid. Without it, we are alone, cut off, hidden. Once it goes dark, no one will ever find us. Ethan's lips curled into a bitter smile. Isn't that what I came here for? Leah's eyes hardened, sorrow flickering beneath her resolve. You came to die in silence. But the Ark is not yours to bury. It carries 17,000 species, 437 civilizations. To extinguish its voice is to condemn every one of them to eternal silence. And to activate the weapons, we would also drain life support. We would survive the battle only to suffocate or freeze. The choice hung between them, heavy as the void outside. Ethan's instincts screamed for immediate action, to strike before Vex could carve his way inside. But Leah's words dug into his chest, forcing him to see the scale of what hung in the balance. It wasn't just about survival. It was about legacy, The comms crackled again, Vex's voice dripping with disdain. "I can hear you scurrying inside, Cross. Do you think I don't know you? You've always been predictable. You'll waste time debating, and while you argue, my men will open the door for me. And then," his tone sharpened, "then I will take what I came for, the Ark and your life." Ethan ground his teeth, his anger threatening to spill over. "He's toying with us." Leah's hand brushed lightly against his arm, grounding him. Her voice softened. "He wants you to lose control. Rage blinds. You know this." He met her gaze, saw in her eyes not just human sorrow, but the echo of the Ark's infinite patience. Against his instincts, he forced his breathing to slow. "Then what's our move?" Leah turned back to the console, her fingers tracing alien symbols that lit beneath her touch. "The Ark's defenses can be awakened, but not fully, not yet. We can bring partial systems online, enough to hold them at bay, but it will require synchronization, as we did before." Ethan grimaced, memories of electricity coursing through his veins, and Leah's screams as she fused with the Ark system still raw in his mind. "And the cost?" She didn't look at him. "Pain, risk, perhaps more than last time. The Ark remembers your trust, but it will demand more from us now." The walls shook violently as another section of the hull gave way. Red warning lights strobed across the chamber. On the monitors, Ethan saw Vex's crew advancing with mechanical precision, armored figures cutting deeper, weapons gleaming under the sparks. They were minutes from breaching. Ethan turned to Leah, his jaw set. "Do it, whatever it takes. We can't let them in." Leah closed her eyes, exhaling a trembling breath. When she opened them again, the glow inside had deepened, threads of light weaving through her veins like living fire. She placed both hands on the console. The chamber brightened instantly, as though the station itself inhaled. The Ark roared awake. Through the armored glass, Ethan saw energy turrets rise from hidden recesses along the station's hull, their surfaces glowing with Forerunner sigils. Drones launched like silver comets swarming into the void. The Rust Corona shuddered as the first salvo of energy beams lanced across the darkness, tearing into its shields with blinding force. Inside, alarms blared. Ethan watched in awe as weapons that had slumbered for centuries unleashed their fury once more. But the cost was immediate. The temperature in the command center dropped, air thinned, lights flickered as life support drained. Ethan's chest tightened as oxygen levels dipped. His breath came harder, shallower. Leah's body convulsed, her neural interface blazing as the Ark systems overloaded her fragile frame. Sparks erupted across her skin, her blood glowing faintly as though she were burning from the inside. Ethan rushed to her side, gripping her shoulders. "Leah, stop! You're killing yourself!" Her eyes opened, glowing brighter than before, layered voices spilling from her lips. "The Ark must fight. I must fight. If we falter, everything ends." Outside, Vex's ship retaliated, unleashing missiles that streaked toward the Ark in glowing arcs. Turrets intercepted some, but explosions tore across sections of the hull. The base groaned, the entire structure trembling with impact. Ethan held Leah as she screamed through clenched teeth, her voice echoing with harmonics not entirely her own. And then, through the chaos, Vex's voice returned, calm and cutting. "So you've awakened it. I wondered if you would. But even the Ark cannot protect you forever. You'll exhaust yourselves. You'll bleed yourselves dry. And when you're broken, I'll step inside and take what's mine." Ethan roared back at the speakers, his voice raw. "You'll never have it, Vex. Not while I breathe." Vex chuckled, the sound venomous. "Then let's see how long that lasts." Another barrage struck, hurling Ethan against the console. Leah slumped, her glow dimming, though the Ark's weapons still roared in defiance. Ethan dragged himself up, pain screaming through his ribs. His eyes locked on the monitors, on the image of Vex's ship hammering the Ark, and for the first time in years he felt not despair but clarity. He had come here to die, but not like this, not in surrender, not in silence. If Vex wanted a war, then Ethan Cross would give him one. The command center shook with every impact. consoles flickering, sparks raining from overhead conduits. The Ark's weapons fired in steady rhythm, ancient cannons unleashing streams of energy that painted the void in blinding arcs. Drones swarmed Vex's ship, striking like silver wasps, their movements too precise, too alien for human prediction. Yet still, the rust corona endured, its shields flaring and rippling as it absorbed the barrage. Ethan gritted his teeth, gripping the console to steady himself. "It's not enough," he growled. "They're bleeding us out." Leah stood at the heart of the chamber, her bioluminescence blazing. Light threaded through her veins like molten fire, every pulse of the Ark's systems mirrored in her fragile body. She swayed, trembling, caught between control and collapse. "The Ark can sustain this, for now," she whispered, though her voice carried layered harmonics that resonated from the walls themselves. But Vex is right. It will not last forever. He knows how to exploit what was once forgotten. Ethan's eyes narrowed. "What do you mean?" Her gaze flicked to one of the monitors, where Vex's ship maneuvered with uncanny precision, dodging the drones, targeting weak points along the Ark's hull. He has studied Forerunner systems. His weapons are not ordinary. They are tuned to disrupt preservation fields, to pierce armor designed for eternity. He is not guessing. He is hunting. The words settled like ice in Ethan's chest. Vex hadn't come here by chance. He hadn't stumbled across this sanctuary. He had sought it, prepared for it, armed himself with knowledge and technology no ordinary scavenger should possess. The station lurched again, harder this time, throwing Ethan against the console. Pain shot through his ribs, but he forced himself upright. "Then we changed the game," he snapped. "Tell me how we hurt him." Leah's lips parted, but before she could answer, the lights dimmed across the command center. A low rumble spread through the Ark, deeper than sound, a vibration Ethan felt in his bones. His pulse stuttered. For a moment, he thought the reactor was failing again. But then the screens shifted, filling with faces, hundreds, thousands. Ghostly images flickering across the displays, humanoids with eyes like obsidian pools, serpentine forms wrapped in living flame, crystalline beings whose gestures glittered like prisms. Voices filled the air, overlapping, incomprehensible, yet painfully alive. Ethan staggered back, heart pounding. "What is this?" Leah's glow pulsed in time with the cacophony, her voice trembling as she translated what he could not understand. "The Ark is speaking. It knows we are under siege, and it is remembering." The faces shifted, coalescing into visions of battles long past, Forerunner fleets blazing against unknown enemies, civilizations falling into silence, species preserved in the instant before extinction. The Ark wasn't just a vault, it was a witness. And now, under threat, it replayed the traumas it had carried for millennia. Ethan pressed a hand to his temple, the sheer weight of the images crushing his thoughts. He saw Martinez again, his young sergeant's smile frozen forever in betrayal. He saw 23 soldiers falling, screaming for backup that never came. The holographic battlefield Vex had conjured was gone, but the Ark's memories were worse. They were real. He couldn't breathe. He couldn't move. Leah's voice cut through the storm, sharp and desperate. "Ethan, listen to me." She gripped his arm, her hand hot with unnatural heat. "These are not your ghosts. They belong to the Ark. Do not let them consume you." He staggered, shaking his head violently. "They're mine," he choked out. "I left them. I promised, and I left them." Her grip tightened, her eyes glowing brighter, almost blinding. "Now the guilt is yours. The deaths were his." She spat the last word like venom, her gaze snapping toward the image of Vex's ship battering the hull. "You carry wounds," he inflicted. "Do not confuse the knife with the scar." Ethan froze, her words sinking into the chaos of his mind. He met her gaze, saw not judgment but fierce, unyielding conviction. Slowly, painfully, he forced air into his lungs, steadying himself against the storm. The ghosts didn't fade, but they no longer owned him. The Ark's voices dimmed, the images receding into static. Leah slumped against him, her glow faltering. "It listens to you," she whispered. "Through you, it remembers mercy." Before Ethan could respond, the comms crackled again, Vex's laughter slicing through the moment. "Touching," he sneered. "Truly touching. You found yourself a spirit to cling to. But it changes nothing. You can't save her, Cross. You couldn't save the others, and you can't save her." Ethan's teeth ground together, rage steady now, no longer blind. He stepped toward the comm panel, his voice low, dangerous. "You're right about one thing, Vex. I couldn't save them. But I can stop you." The monitors lit with Vex's face, calm and cruel. "Stop me. You! You're already half dead, clinging to a ghost and a station that doesn't even want you. Do you think you can outfight me here, in the belly of a Forerunner Ark?" His smile widened. "I studied it, Cross. I understand it. And soon I will own it." Leah pushed herself upright, her glow faint but steady. Her voice resonated with layered tones. "You understand nothing. To own the Ark is to be devoured by it. You are a child playing with infinity." Vex's smile didn't falter. "We'll see." The comm cut. A moment later, the Ark shuddered as a new barrage tore across its hull. Alarms screamed, pressure warnings flashing red across the consoles. Sections of the station were venting into space. Ethan gripped the console, fury blazing through him. "He's going to tear this place apart if we don't stop him now." Leah's gaze locked onto his, her bioluminescence flaring in sync with the Ark's heartbeat. "Then we stop him. Not with rage, not with despair, but with choice." "What choice?" Ethan demanded. Her fingers danced across the controls, symbols lighting beneath her touch. "The Ark has weapons Vex cannot anticipate, but to wield them, it must open its heart fully to us. And that means one of us must go deeper than before. Merge not just with its systems, but with its consciousness." Her voice faltered. "It will change whoever accepts, permanently." Ethan's throat tightened. "No, you've already given too much. Look at you. You're burning from the inside out." Her eyes softened, sadness glimmering beneath the glow. "And you've carried too much. Guilt has chained you for decades. Perhaps this is the balance." The room shook violently, consoles sparking. The Ark groaned under another strike. Time was bleeding away. Ethan grabbed her shoulders, forcing her to meet his eyes. "We'll find another way." Her lips curved in a faint, sorrowful smile. "Perhaps. But if not, remember this. The Ark does not preserve the dead. It preserves the living. And you, Ethan Cross, are still alive." Another explosion rocked the chamber, throwing them both to the floor. Alarms wailed. Drones screamed past the windows, energy lancing the void. The battle was reaching its breaking point, and Ethan knew the choice was coming. The first breach came with a shriek of tearing metal, a sound that stabbed through the command center like a blade. Ethan's head snapped toward the monitor in time to see sparks blossom along the inner corridors. Vex's men had cut their way through. Figures in heavy exosuits stepped into the Ark's halls, their armor gleaming, their weapons glowing with stolen Forerunner energy. The command center lights flickered as the Ark shifted, rerouting power to seal bulkheads and deploy drones. But the invaders moved with precision, cutting through barriers, dropping drones with disciplined volleys of plasma fire. These weren't mere scavengers. Vex had trained them for this, molded them into predators. Ethan's hand tightened around his blaster. His chest ached with the need to fight, to meet them in the corridors and spill their blood before they reached Leah. But Leah's voice stopped him. "No," she whispered, her glow faint but resolute. "That is what he wants. He wants you distracted. He wants you to spend your rage on his soldiers while he takes the heart of the Ark." Ethan turned toward her, his jaw tight. "So what's the alternative? Sit here and wait until they tear the door down?" Her gaze held his, steady despite the tremors racking her body. "The alternative is choice. The Ark must awaken fully if it is to defend itself. That means merging. One of us must give everything." The words hung heavy in the air, heavier than any weapon. Ethan felt his stomach twist. He knew what she was saying. One of them had to bind their consciousness permanently with the Ark, surrendering self to become part of its living memory. There would be no return, no undoing. Ethan shook his head violently. "Not you. You've already sacrificed enough. You're burning alive just standing here. Leah stepped closer, her light dim but unwavering. "And you? You came here to die. But now you have something left to live for." He opened his mouth to argue, but the words stuck in his throat. She was right. For the first time in decades, Ethan had found something beyond guilt, beyond rage. He had found purpose again, in her, in the Ark, in the possibility of redemption. The thought of losing it now cut deeper than any battlefield wound. The monitors crackled. Vex's voice filled the chamber, calm, mocking. "Cross, still clinging to ghosts, I see. Tell me, do you hear them screaming in your head even now? Or does she drown them out for you?" Ethan's grip on his blaster tightened until his hand ached. "You'll never touch her," he spat. Vex chuckled. "She's already mine. Do you think I don't recognize what she is? A bridge, a key. The Ark won't open to you, Cross, but it will open to her. And when I take her, I'll take everything." Leah's glow flared, fierce despite her weakening body. "You will take nothing," she said, her voice resonating with the Ark itself. The door shuddered, dented by repeated blasts. Sparks rained down as the reinforced steel bent inward. Vex's soldiers were seconds away. Ethan turned back to Leah, his throat tight. "Tell me what to do." Her eyes softened. "One of us must merge. If it is me, I will vanish, but the Ark will live. If it is you, your body will die, but your consciousness will endure, woven into the Ark's fabric." Her hand brushed his cheek, gentle despite the fire lacing her veins. "The choice must be yours." The door buckled again, glowing with molten cracks. Ethan's heart pounded. His instincts screamed to act, but the decision ripped at him like shrapnel. Leah fading, fragile, yet carrying the Ark's voice. Himself, broken, haunted, yet still breathing. The screams of his men on Orion 7 rang in his ears. He had abandoned them once. Could he abandon her now? Before he could answer, the door exploded inward. Vex's soldiers poured through, armored giants with glowing weapons. The command center filled with light and fire. Ethan's blaster snapped up, instinct taking over. He fired, each shot precise, driven by decades of training. The first soldier crumpled, sparks erupting from his suit. The second staggered, armor hissing as plasma burned through. But there were too many. Leah staggered back, pressing both hands to the console. Her glow surged, flooding the chamber with light. The Ark responded instantly. Drones swarming through vents, turrets unfolding from hidden recesses. Energy beams lanced across the command center, vaporizing intruders in bursts of fire. But Vex wasn't among them. He stepped through the smoke last, calm, deliberate. His armor gleamed, Forerunner symbols etched across its surface. In his hand, he carried a weapon unlike any Ethan had seen before. A blade of pure energy, humming with unnatural resonance. His smile was cold, predatory. "Hello, Cross," Vex said, his voice calm even amid the chaos. "It's been a long time." Ethan leveled his blaster, fury boiling in his veins. "Not long enough." They clashed. Ethan's blaster barked, bolts of plasma streaking toward Vex, but the commander moved with terrifying speed. The energy blade carved through the air, deflecting shots, sending sparks cascading across the chamber. In the blur, Vex was inside Ethan's guard, the blade slicing toward his chest. Ethan dove aside, the heat of the weapon searing past his ribs. They fought like ghosts of a war that had never ended. Ethan's blaster against Vex's blade, soldier against betrayer, past against present. Every strike, every dodge carried the weight of Orion 7. Ethan's muscles screamed, his body battered and broken, but rage fueled him. Rage sharpened him. Leah's voice cut through the chaos, layered with the Ark's resonance. "Ethan, the choice." Ethan's eyes flicked toward her just for a heartbeat. She stood at the console, her glow blazing brighter than ever, her body trembling as the Ark surged through her. She was seconds from collapse, seconds from being consumed. Vex lunged, his blade arcing toward Ethan's throat. Instinct drove Ethan forward. He slammed into Vex, both men crashing to the floor. The blade hissed, carving a molten scar into the steel beside them. Ethan's blaster skittered away. They grappled hand to hand, fists pounding, muscles straining. Vex's armor gave him the edge, but Ethan's fury made him relentless. He slammed Vex's head against the floor, once, twice, until the commander snarled and drove a knee into his ribs. Pain flared white-hot, but Ethan refused to yield. Leah screamed, her voice resonating with 1,000 harmonics. "Now, Ethan, choose!" The world slowed. The battle faded. Ethan saw only two paths: surrender Leah to the Ark and lose her forever, or merge himself and abandon the fragile thread of humanity he had left. His hand closed around Vex's throat, squeezing with all the strength of a man who had nothing left to lose. His gaze snapped to Leah. Her eyes glowed like twin stars, pleading, begging him to let her go. But Ethan Cross had broken enough promises. "I choose," he growled, and then he hurled himself toward the console, toward the heart of the Ark, even as Vex clawed at him from behind. His hand slammed against the glowing surface, his mind opening, his consciousness unraveling. Light consumed him. The instant Ethan's palm met the console, the world exploded into light. Not the cold glare of weapons fire, not the searing flash of plasma, but something deeper, something infinite. His mind stretched outward, torn from the fragile boundaries of flesh and bone. He felt every neuron ignite like a star, every memory ripped open, every scar exposed to the vast current flowing into him. And then he was no longer Ethan Cross alone. The Ark poured into him, and he into it. Voices thundered through his consciousness, millions, billions, overlapping, incomprehensible, yet achingly alive. Civilizations long dead whispered their final songs. Species extinguished in silence screamed against oblivion. Worlds shattered into dust sang their last sunlight into the void. He felt them all, not as strangers, but as extensions of himself. Their grief, their joy, their triumph, their surrender. Every note resounded inside him. For a heartbeat he drowned. The weight of existence itself threatened to crush him. Every preserved life pressing against his mind like an ocean collapsing on a single drop. He clawed for breath, for identity. He was Ethan Cross, soldier, commander, traitor to promises. He was Ethan Cross, haunted by the face of Martinez, by the laughter of men who had died because he had trusted the wrong leader. He was Ethan Cross, and the Ark tried to consume him. But Ethan did not yield. He seized the torrent, forcing his will into it, molding it not as a weapon but as a shield. He thought of Martinez's daughter, the baby girl who had grown up fatherless. He thought of every soldier who had trusted him, every name carved into memory. He thought of Leah, fragile and luminous, standing against the dark with nothing but her faith. He anchored himself in them, refused to dissolve. He would not vanish. He would become more. The Ark shuddered in recognition. The torrent shifted, harmonizing with him instead of devouring him. And suddenly he was not drowning. He was flying. Through the walls of the command center, through the bulkheads and circuits, through the endless corridors of memory and light. Ethan spread. He saw the invaders moving through the halls, Vex's soldiers, armored, relentless. With a single thought, drones swarmed them, overwhelming their weapons, tearing their suits apart. He felt their screams as brief flashes in the current before they were extinguished. And then he found Vex. The commander stood in the command center, energy blade blazing, his face twisted in rage and disbelief. Leah had collapsed against the console, her glow flickering weakly, her breaths shallow. Vex loomed over her, his blade raised to strike, but Ethan was already there, not in flesh, not in bone, but in presence. The lights flared, the walls trembled, the floor split with radiant energy. Vex froze as Ethan's voice filled the chamber, not from his mouth, but from everywhere, from the Ark itself. Marcus Vex. The commander spun, his blade slicing at shadows. Cross? His voice cracked, disbelief searing through his fury. No, this is impossible. You're dead. Ethan's voice thundered, layered with 1,000 harmonics, the echo of civilizations long gone. I was. But now, I am more. Vex snarled, swinging his blade at the consoles, at the walls, trying to cut down the station itself. Sparks erupted, but the arc absorbed every strike. Ethan surged through the systems, seizing the blade mid-swing with sheer energy. The weapon sputtered, crackled, then shattered into shards of molten light. Vex staggered back, his eyes wide with fear for the first time. "What are you?" Ethan's presence pressed down, heavy as gravity, vast as the stars. "I am the Ark. I'm the memory of 17,000 species. I'm the promise you broke, the men you left to die. I am every life you tried to silence." The walls flared with light, surrounding Vex in a cage of energy. He fought, screamed, raged, but the Ark bent him down. Ethan felt every ounce of his former commander's fear, every drop of his cruelty, every scar of betrayal. He could end him now, crush him, erase him, preserve him as nothing more than a footnote in history. Leah's voice reached him, soft, trembling. "Ethan, don't." He hesitated. Through her eyes, he saw not vengeance but mercy. To preserve Vex would be to carry his poison forever. To destroy him would be to replicate his cruelty. But to let him go, to let him vanish into his own emptiness, that was justice. Ethan released the energy. The cage collapsed, not in fire, but in silence. Vex's scream echoed once, then faded into nothing as the Ark expelled him, casting his body into the void beyond the hull. The last thing Ethan saw was the terror in his eyes before the vacuum claimed him. The battle was over. The Ark quieted, its systems stabilizing, its drones retreating into hibernation. The preserved voices dimmed, settling back into memory. The station breathed again, alive but at peace. Ethan felt himself unraveling, his consciousness woven too deeply into the Ark to ever return. But he did not grieve. For the first time since Orion 7, he felt whole. He had not abandoned Leah. He had not broken this promise. Leah stirred, her glow faint but steady. She looked up at the console, tears glimmering in her luminous eyes. "Ethan," she whispered. His voice reached her gentle everywhere. "I'm here." Her hands pressed against the console, as though she could touch him through steel and light. "You gave everything." "I gave what was left of me," he said softly. And for the first time, it was enough. She closed her eyes, her lips trembling with a fragile smile. "You're part of them now, all of them, and part of you," he replied. "As long as you breathe, Leah, I'll be here. In the Ark, in the memory of the living." Her tears fell, but her voice was steady. "Then I will carry you forward. I will keep the Ark alive, for you, for all of them." Ethan's presence brushed against her mind, warm, steady, infinite. "Not for me, for the future." The chamber dimmed, the consoles glowing with gentle rhythm, as though the Ark itself had fallen into peaceful slumber. Leah remained fragile but alive, her hand resting on the console, where Ethan's presence lingered. Outside, the stars burned steady, indifferent but eternal. The war veteran who had come here to die had instead become something greater, guardian of 1,000 civilizations. Protector of the Ark, his silence had transformed into legacy, and in the quiet hum of the station, Leah whispered his name, carrying it into forever.